And yeah. Okay, so we are going to be working through this ES6 workshop repository. I forked it from Aaron Frost. Who here knows who Aaron Frost is? A couple of you. Aaron Frost rocks. I worked with him at Domo, and he's a lot of fun. He knows a lot about ES6. And so, yeah, this presentation is based on his repo and his work. So the idea behind this repository is that it's just a bunch of tests that are failing, and then you have to write ES6 code to get them to succeed. Obviously, like, yeah. Anyway, so what we're going to cover in this short time that we have together are some of the many features available in ES6. So it's been a couple of years since we've had a release of ECMAScript. Who knows what I mean when I say ES6? Okay, so just for those who didn't raise their hands, ES stands for ECMAScript, and actually I shouldn't say ES6, it's actually ES 2015, but yeah, but basically ES6 or ES 2015 is the next version of the specification upon which JavaScript is implemented. And so, yeah, ECMAScript, and there's a whole history about why it's called ECMA. Yeah, it's just a specification, and then browser vendors will take that specification and implement it in their browsers. And so it defines what you write when you're writing JavaScript. And yeah, so lots of times you'll hear JavaScript gets a lot of flack because it's so weird and so crazy. JavaScript's in kind of a unique situation because first off, the language was written in 2 weeks by a man named Brendan Eich, and yeah, he's a rock star. But at the time, like, lots of the stuff that he didn't cover a lot of cases. Like, for example, you couldn't do a try-catch, and like there are a bunch of things that the language was missing. But it was the best that we had at the time, and somehow, miraculously or unfortunately, it just took off and got implemented by all browsers, maybe in some different ways in some cases. But ultimately, standards started to come forth, and we had, yeah, and what we're writing on right now is ES 5.1 in most cases. If you have to support IE 8, I think that's ES 5. So I'm sorry. So anyway, the reason that we're really excited about ES6 and going forward is like JavaScript is a real thing, and it's like way popular in the world. Everything runs it. So it's like that dream of write once, run it everywhere is finally realized with JavaScript. And so we're really excited about ES6 because it's the first release of the ECMA standard that will start the yearly release cycle of the ECMAScript standard. So there are a ton of different features available in ES6. ES7 has a bunch that they're already working through, and ES8 or 2017, like, so yeah, sorry, you'll hear and see ES6 and ES 2015. That's the same thing. They're just switching the way that we're doing version numbers to be the year that it's released, and there are reasons for that too. But yeah, that's less important than actually learning what this is all about. So. One other question that I wanted to, just so I gauge who I'm talking to, it's okay to be new to JavaScript. Like, that's okay. So raise your hand if you've only been doing JavaScript for 6 months or less. Okay, 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, 0 months. Okay, so we do have some new people here. So you guys are lucky because you don't know why ES6 is so cool. Those of us who've been doing this for a while are so excited about ES6 because it's cleaning up some of the junk that we've had to deal with for the last couple of years, or however long we've been doing JavaScript. So yeah, ES6 is great. Does anybody have any questions before I actually start showing you ES6 stuff? Yes.
What's the page that you're on again?
It is github.com/kentcdodds/ES6-workshop.
It's on the meetup page too. If you know that.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so let me just quickly show you an example of ES6 code. So if you just want to play around with ES6, you're not actually like building anything, you just want to see how to use ES6, then first off I would say go to, let's see, I didn't push that. Sorry, one second. Let me push something. If you refresh the ES6 workshop, you'll find a link, the new features. That's a link. This link is also in the meetup description. But this will show you a lot of examples of the new things that you have in ES6. And so you can scroll through this and see a lot of the cool examples. So you could take some of this code, and this code won't actually work in any browser that I'm aware of. I don't think any of the browsers have supported arrow functions yet. But if you want to see what this actually looks like in ES5, then you can copy this and go to this website here, which if somebody, AJ, could you know what this is, this website? Yeah, could you post that in the meetup? A link to that?
Yeah, let me
okay, so AJ will post a link to this real quick. But you can go here and you just paste in the examples, and then you can see the ES5 equivalent to that example. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about Babel toward the end, but Babel is what makes it possible for you to use ES6 today in your projects. And that's critical that you understand that just because ES6 is not implemented in today's browsers doesn't prevent you from using it in your projects today. And I use it in my project, and it's awesome, so I recommend that you do so also. So yeah, Babel is great. There are a couple other transpilers that will do this, but Babel is by far the one that has the most support, or supports the most features, and has a great deal of community support. So, all right, without any further ado, let's go look at the repository. So here, I've got my terminal, I got my editor, life is good. So if you were to just clone this initially, you'll want to run npm install, or pro tip, npm I is the shortcut for that. But it'll install a couple of the dependencies that we have here in our package.json, and just kind of glaze over that. In fact, we don't even need this dependency or this dependency anymore anyway, so whatever. But yeah, glaze over that. That's not important to ES6. That's just important to your salvation. No, just kidding. But it'll install some dependencies for you. And then the idea behind this repository is like I said, it's filled with tests that are full of failing tests that you need to write ES6 to make pass. And we're going to just go through those and see how to use ES6 to accomplish some cool stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. There is a script in our package.json that we can run inside of our project, and it is called test watch. And so if you're not familiar with package.json and npm and all that, don't worry about it. Just know that if you put a script in here, you can run it by saying npm run test watch, or whatever the name of the script is. And what we're doing here is we're using the Mocha framework. You don't need to worry about that. That's just the testing framework we're using. We're watching for file changes. So when you run this, it'll rerun the tests every single time you change a file. And then we're using the Babel compiler to transpile our ES6 code into ES5 code before our tests are run. So all of that, worry about that later. Right now, what really matters is that you simply run this script. You'll see that the tests are run, and we see our results here: 0 passing, 40 pending. So we're skipping all of our tests, and we're going to enable the test as we come to it to start actually writing ES6 code. So really quick, I checked before, but is anybody having a hard time seeing my code? Yes? Okay. Would it be better to be bigger or to be white background? So I could do a bigger. Okay, let's do 26. How's that? Is that better? Okay. Sorry, was it? That good? Great. Okay, so let's go ahead and enable this. This is just a Mocha thing. Don't worry about, like, this is not an ES6 thing. So we enable it by taking off the skip. And then I'm actually, just to simplify things a little bit, I'm going to put a dot only on our describe, so it will only run the tests inside of here, so that we can see in our terminal exactly what we're changing. So I'll save that, and our file changes. Our watcher will run our tests again, and we see that we have one failing test. And I'm actually going to make this a little smaller just so we can see that on a single line. If you can't read that, I'll read it to you. So here we say let can be used in place of var, and we're getting an error there, so this test is failing. Reference error, bad name not defined. So, and that's obvious. So I have bad name or band name here, and it's not being declared. So in ES5 or pre-ES6, you would say var band name equals, and to make our test pass, we'd say queen. So I save this, and oh yeah, and we're failing now because best band needs to be true. So let's go ahead and make that one really quick. So var is best band equals true. We save and everything's passing. So far this is this code right here is all just ES5 stuff. So this has a couple of problems that we'll get into in just a little bit, but just to show you the well, yeah, it'd probably be better to demonstrate the problems that this has first. So I'll go ahead and skip this one, and we'll go down to the to this one, is trapped inside of an if. So I'll enable that test. We're getting an error now. So what's happening in this code is we're saying if true, so we have a block here, then we're going to say var b equals 1. And what we want to have happen is we want b to be scoped to the block of this if statement. But the way that JavaScript works is it's actually when it goes through your code twice. First it goes through to take care of these variable declarations, and then it goes through again to make the assignments. So JavaScript, the implementations right now are going to rewrite your code sort of like this. So I'll put the var up here, and then the b equals 1 right there. So that's the equivalent. That's the way the browser sees your code. But this is a problem when you have situations like this, when you're doing a loop and you want to deal with that variable, because that variable is not scoped to this for loop, but it's scoped to the function. So if all that's going over your head, it's okay. Go and learn about it because it is valuable to know. So the way that we solve this problem, or the way that we make this test pass, or more specifically, the way that we scope this b variable to this if block right here, is we simply use the keyword let. And then we'll take out that var declaration there. And let is scoping the b variable to this block right here. So if I save, I should get a passing test there. Let's go up here and we'll unskip that and we'll change this to let. And now we have 2 passing tests. One other thing that I should mention is it's actually arguably better to use const. And I don't have any specific tests for const, but I'll just show you what const does. So we're going to change this to const and const here. And so that is basically the equivalent. The difference here being if I say band name equals, I don't know, journey, now I'm getting an error. It explodes at me. And this isn't JavaScript, or this isn't the browser exploding at me. Actually, const and let are actually implemented in Chrome, at least. I think Firefox as well. But this is Babel is throwing up at me and saying, hey, you can't change the assignment of a variable that you created with a const declaration. And this is I would say that this is a good practice to use const unless you plan on changing something. So most of your variables should be declared with const, just because it encourages some, well, it discourages some pitfalls with changing variables and not really actually knowing that you're doing so, and depending on what it was assigned to before. So yeah, that's just a little tip. I generally will use let and const because both of those are blocked to like if statements and for loops. So yeah, it's just advisable to use let and const for most of the time. Most of my application doesn't use var anymore. So okay, so let's continue through and make these all these tests pass. So here we'll change this to let, and we got that one passing, and this one will fail. So this is actually a block statement. You will never ever do this because this is like kind of weird to do, just random curly brace, but you can do that. So we can scope this variable to that block just using the let keyword, and now that's passing. So I think we've got one more skipped here. Sorry, missed that. So we'll declare release name as ES6, and then we can change that because this isn't const to ES 2015, and now that one's passing. Okay, any questions about let and const? Okay, great.
What
Yeah.
happens if I use those in regular JavaScript?
Today it will actually work in Chrome and in Firefox. Although I'm pretty sure that if you use let x equals high, yeah, it throws an error, and that's because let const function class not supported outside of strict mode. And even if you try this, use strict and then let x equals high, I don't think that'll work either because this is just like some extra stuff. But if I put a debugger in here, it will tell the browser to put like a break in the DevTools at this spot. Oh, and we'll change this to var. So if you look at what actually happens when you execute commands in the terminal there, it actually wraps your stuff inside of this this context in this block. And so you couldn't really usefully use let or const in there because they'd be blocked to this random thing that they stick around your stuff. So that's just extra credit. But anyway, const and let are supported by the latest version of Chrome and I believe the latest version of Firefox. So yeah, feel free. But I recommend that if you're not going to be transpiling, just use var, and or rather just transpile because it's great. Okay, any other questions about let and const? Okay, great. Let's move on to destructuring. This is awesome. And actually, before I do that, let's turn off describe only because we want to run all the tests. And now we'll go to destructuring, and we're going to only our destructuring. So we have 7 tests in here. So destructuring is really, really cool. Let's go ahead and take off the skip on that. We get an error reference error city is not defined. So here we're using that city, and we want to define this city, but we want to do this in a special way. If we look down at the bottom here, we have this function called getAddress, and that returns us an object that has a city, state, zip, and chords. That's an object with the lat and the long. And then we also have this getNumbers that we'll use a little bit later. So we're going to invoke this and pull out the city, state, and zip without storing the result of this in a single object, but we're just going to like pull those properties out of that object as we assign it. If that didn't make sense, it will in a moment. So in ES5, this is what you would do. You'd say get the address, and now I have a reference to that address, and then I can get the city off that address, the state, and the zip. But that's like a bunch of lines of code and not very fun to write. So instead, what we're going to do is we'll say const city state zip is equal to get address, and this is destructuring. Now our test pass. So this is, yeah, to me this is way cool because and we use this a lot in our import statements. So we'll talk about modules next. But like I only want the expect property off of the chai module, and so I'm only getting that that expect property, and I can, yeah, so I can just pull out the things that I care about. This is also way cool inside of a parameters in your function, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So before I go on to more tests, does anybody have questions about what's going on here, what's actually happening? Yeah?
Can we name variables? in this
Yes.
process? Okay.
Good question. We'll look at that here in just a second. Any other questions? Maybe I should just go on, and then that might answer some questions. So let's go ahead and we'll enable this test. So this one's saying destructuring with object sets missing values to undefined, and that we're getting a reference error where address is not defined. So here we have address, and if we were to do this same thing right here, and instead we wanted to pull out address, then what's actually happening is it's going to get the address. Here I'm going to get this object, and because I'm destructuring, it's going to look for the address property on here. There is no address property on here, and so that's undefined, and so that's why address is not defined. This would be this would also apply if I put Sean in here. So like anything that's not defined. So it's you could write this just as easily if you did address equals get address, and then var Sean equals address dot Sean. That's the same equivalent to what we're doing there. So it's not going to magically pull out a property, but it's not going to throw an error on you either, which is also useful and scary. So okay, let's move on to the next one. Can alias destructured variables? So this is the renaming, Sean, that you were asking about. So here we have C, S, and Z. So we want to alias our city's state and zip to different variable names. So that is easily done by, actually here we'll just copy paste this line and stick it right there. And then we're going to say city is C, state is S, and zip is Z. So that's how you alias your the properties. So the equivalent in ES6, well, oh man, I should be using this. The equivalent to that would be you get the address, you assign it to some variable. I should probably make this bigger. And then you set the city to C, state to S, and Z. Yeah. So aliasing for the win. Okay, so now can destructure nested variables. This one I actually had to practice a couple times because I've never actually done this. Hopefully I don't mess it up. So what we want to accomplish is, if you look down here, we have this chords object that has a lat and a long, and we want to just pull those that lat and long out of the chords object. So we can do this by saying const chords lat long equals get address. Ah, it failed. Oh, long. There we go. Ha! It passed. Yes. So this, I don't know what to say about this except that this is the syntax. So I personally, I've been doing ES6 like almost all my stuff is ES6 for the last 4 months or so, and I've never really felt the need to do this. But it's kind of nice to know that you can. So yeah, before I move on to how you do destructuring with arrays, does anyone have any questions about how you do it with objects?
So on that example you had on line 51, so it's just pulling out the lat and long properties out of the get address, filling those in, is that what it's
So what it's doing here is it's first pulling the chords out of the get address, and then it's pulling the lat and long out of chords. Yeah, and also important to note is chords is not actually getting defined either. So this is just like a shorthand for, haha, thank you Babel, shorthand for this. So yeah, they try to make their generated code readable, and I feel like it is fairly readable. But yeah, this is sort of what's going on, is you make a reference to what's returned, then you make a reference to what you want from what's returned, and then you get what you want off of that thing. So then you could like probably go way crazy in like top and bottom, and then it'd be like, what? Crazy dollar signs. Yeah. So that makes sense? Okay, great. So let's look at arrays with destructuring. So it can be used to pull apart arrays. So here we have this function get numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we are going to pull out the first 2 items out of this array and assign them to 1 and 2. The way that you do this is you say const and 1, 2, and get numbers. And so, yeah, hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to show you a little bit of magic that you can do by skipping indexes in arrays. So, oh, one other thing is, you notice, like, even though I'm getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't have to actually reference all of the rest of them. I just have to go as far as I want from the ones that I want to pull out. And so I can also skip indexes in this array, so I can say const 1, or let's see, what do I need? 1 and 3. And then get numbers, and that works as well. And 2 is not defined. I'm not actually putting that anywhere. And 1 and 3 are defined. This to me looks kind of weird, just to have like this empty thing there, but it totally works, and I've actually used it. So yeah, it's kind of neat.
Do you need the space in here?
You don't need the space. No space is necessary. And uglification will actually, your transpilation will totally convert this anyway, but in the future, uglification will take out the spaces. So, good question. Any other questions about that? We're going to do a couple more. So you can also nest arrays. So here we have this special function for this test, get nested numbers. And so let's see if I can do this in one go. We'll say const, and we want to get out 1, 3, and 6. So we're going to say 1, we'll skip that one. And then we're going to say 3 as a part, like destructuring the next array. And then we'll skip 4. And then we'll do destructuring the next array. We'll skip 5 and do 6. And that equals get nested numbers. And we don't want to skip that one. Ah, man. Oh, thank you. Ah, man, again. Attempted destructuring not. Sorry, what? Get rid of this comma? Oh, add a comma. Thank you. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. I didn't think that I'd be able to get that one in one go. So, obviously, to some people, this made sense. Is everybody like? Does this make sense? What's going on? This is like wildly complicated. I would actually recommend that you don't do this in your applications, because the next guy to come around here is going to be like, "What on earth?" They'll take it over to Babel. And they'll be like, okay, let's do this for reals. And then they'll just copy this and put it right there, and the test still passes, so they're good. And then you're going to wind up with $signs all over the place. Just kidding. But yeah, this is kind of crazy. I wouldn't recommend doing things this way. But we're not here to write scalable applications right now. We're here to learn about ES6, so this is okay. Any other questions about destructuring? We are going to revisit a little bit of destructuring in a moment with the parameter stuff, and that's where I use destructuring most. So, okay, great. Modules. This is the other place I use destructuring quite a bit. So, one of the huge oversights of JavaScript for the last X years has been there's no module system. So what you wind up with is a global variable that you tack everything onto so you can reference things, and or just like global functions everywhere, and like life is awful. And so when Node was created, they were like, yeah, we're not going to deal with this. So they created CommonJS to deal with modules. And so if you've ever seen like var underscore equals require Lodash, this is CommonJS, the module syntax. You also have AMD, which is like define my module, and my dependencies are like crazy stuff, and then my function is this function that takes the crazy stuff. So yeah, module loaders were created because JavaScript didn't have a solution for modules, but all of that has changed with ES6. So you now have a module syntax that will allow you to share code between different files. So you don't have to do like one crazy huge file. You don't have to deal with globals. You now can just say, hey, browser, I depend on this file. And this file right here is just in my common, and it's this mathies thing that has a bunch of functions in it, and then it exports an object here. And we'll be using this object. So this export default, this is part of the ES6 module syntax. And so this is telling the browser, or Babel in our case, hey, I'm a module, and the default thing that I'm going to export is this object. And so when somebody imports me, this is what they get. Yeah, and there are a couple more things to the module export syntax that I'm not going to go over because I want to cover more breadth than depth. But that's a basic idea. And I would contend that this is the most common use case, is to use export default and then just put all the things you're exporting in there. But different styles. Anyway, so here what we're going to do is we'll describe only here, and then we actually need to turn off our only in here in our destructuring. And we'll turn on this test and save. There we go. And you can import Matthew. Hooray! He did this one for us. That was Aaron Frost. Everybody give applause to Aaron Frost. Thank you, Aaron! So let's look at what he's doing. So he's saying, hey JavaScript, I want to import Matthew from common Matthew. And I can call this whatever I want. So I could change, I could change this variable name to like sweet awesome sauce. And thanks WebStorm. I could change that to whatever I want, and it would work. So yeah, the name of the thing that you're putting right here doesn't matter. What does matter is if you were to use something like this, where you're destructuring what you're importing from your module. So let me explain. If we take off the skip on this what we're saying is we can alias the import name. So well, I'll explain the destructuring thing later. Yeah, I kind of actually explained this one already, so let's just do this really quick. So I'm going to import my Matthew from common Matthew. And so that was just saying like Matthew doesn't, like the name of this thing doesn't matter, you can call it whatever you want. Okay, now to destructuring. So if I save this, we're going to get a reference error because my square root and my square don't actually exist. We need to declare these. Oh, and one other thing that I wanted to note is in all of these tests you'll see, note, all import statements have to be done at the top of the file. The reason for this is complicated, but basically the browser needs to know what does this file need before I run the code in the in this file. And there is a concept in ES6 for lazy loading, but we're not going to cover that today because there's too much. So go look that up. It's great. Okay, so what we want to do is we are going to import and destructure the my square root and my square and my square root, and then assert that those are equal to the same thing that they actually should be. So let's first make sure, let's look at our mathy. So we have square root, square, and diag. So we need to not only destructure these, but we need to alias them as well. So let's go up here and we'll say import, and the actual thing that we're importing again is square root. So we'll say square root, and we're going to alias this as my square root. And then we also wanted my square, and that was called square. So we'll stick that there and alias it as my square. And you notice, here, let's say, we'll just do this really quick, common mathy. You notice that WebStorm is angry at me, but and so are my tests. Dang it, what did I do wrong? I don't know what I did wrong, and that's why we have the test final. Oh, that's right. Okay, excuse me. You don't destructure imports the same way that you do objects. So instead of the colon, you do as. Yeah, excuse me for not. I actually have never used this either. But this can be useful to alias things. So yeah, that's that. You say like the thing that you're pulling out of this module, and then you can alias it with the as, and the thing you're pulling out of this module, alias it with the as. You can, yeah. I think that was it. I think actually you can also say, well, yeah, never mind. Does anybody have any questions about that little piece that obviously didn't go so well? Okay, hopefully everybody understands. Okay, great. Okay, am I going too fast or too slow or just right? Just right. Okay, squeaky wheel gets the grease, so no grease. Okay, so we're going to do our last test here. It looks like there must be a memory leak or something because this should be responding quickly, so I'm going to run that again. Okay, so we can import from node modules. So you'll notice here I have this node modules directory, and here I have Lodash in here. Who is not familiar with Lodash? It's okay, admit it. Lodash is a utility library for JavaScript that totally rocks, and you shouldn't be using, like, any project that's bigger than small should be using Lodash because it is awesome. So anyway, that's small is kind of a opinion, relative term, but Lodash is very, very great. So anyway, we have this in our package JSON. This is where we define, hey, this is my module, my node module, which actually technically can be a browser module. But I have some dependencies here, and one of my dependencies is Lodash, this freakishly awesome utility library. And so when I npm install my dependencies, it's going to install Lodash here, and then I can import those node modules using, because things are awesome here. So what we're going to do is we'll just simply say import the underscore character. That's the Lodash, like the common way to reference Lodash, from Lodash. And you notice I don't have to reference it like ... node modules or anything. I just say from Lodash, and it's like magic happens. I actually, to be completely and totally transparent, I'm pretty sure that this only is happening because of the context in which we're running our code in these tests. So this, I don't believe that this is actually part of the ES6 spec. But if you're going to be writing ES6 today, you're going to be using a build tool anyway, which will like cover or hide this implementation detail away from you anyway. So yeah, just
getting that Lodash, just locating it somewhere in your hard drive from the npm.
Yeah. So what's happening technically is when I run my tests, I'm saying, hey, my test runner is Mocha. My entry point is index, and so Mocha is going to look at my index.js file and in here, and this is all common.js. So Mocha runs in a, well, we're running Mocha in a common.js environment, so Node, and so it understands this require statement. And then when I say my compiler is Babel, Babel is going to compile it into, I believe it compiles it into a common.js syntax, but I don't know if there's any way I can find that out. You want to try a quick experiment? Well, no, that won't work. Never mind. But yeah, I believe it'll compile it into a common.js syntax, which Mocha understands, and then common.js will do the looking up in your node modules directory. So toward the end wow, I'm not going to get anywhere close to what I wanted to cover, but toward the end, before I'm done, I'll show you how you can use ES6 today and some of the tools that will allow you to that will kind of handle this for you. So, good question. So anyway, if I save my tests, everything passes, and we're good to move on. So looking at the time, I'm like, holy cow, 20 minutes, and I still need to show you how to use this today. So I'm going to pick and choose a couple of things and take you through them very fast, and I'm not going to explain very many things. Sorry. So you can actually run through this and do it yourself. So let me turn off the only on here. And object literals are really cool. So yeah, there are a couple of really cool things about the new object literal syntax. So one of my favorite things is, well, okay, so this is the ES5 way that you would pass these tests. So if and we'll make this describe only. So this is now passing, this is ES5. So to change this from ES5 to ES6, you have this name, and it's assigned to name. That's extremely redundant, and so ES6 is like, I don't care about that, and so we can do that. Also, this function keyword, it's obvious that this is a function just because it has the open and close parentheses, so you don't need the function keyword anymore. And then I wanted to show you more of this, but here you have these backticks. These are awesome. So this is, oh, these are so cool. Let me show you something. So in JavaScript, if I wanted to do a multi-line string, I would say var x equals like hello, and then I need to do like this plus thing and you, and then oh yeah, sorry. Thank you. And then rock. And so like this isn't that bad because you just like hello you rock. What's the big deal? But if you wanted to have like some sort of DOM or template inside of your JavaScript, good luck. Enjoy that. It's no fun. So with ES6, you have template strings, and template strings are so cool. So not only can you do multi-line strings, so we could say var x equals this template string, and I can say whatever, I don't care how many lines, this is so awesome, and spaces and everything. Not only can you do that, but you can also, I could say var foo equals var, and then in here I can, anywhere I want, say, okay, now I'm in JavaScript, and I'll say foo. And I could even say foo.length, and I could even say get foo, and dot map function, like crazy awesome. Like, don't do that. This is getting a little out of hand. But yeah, but the fact that you can do this inside of your string makes things so much easier. Yeah, so template strings are awesome. I wish I had more time to give you more examples of why they're so cool, but we're using them right here, so that's cool. Okay, so we'll move on. Oh, one other thing about object literals that is way awesome is, let's say we had a counter here, so we'll say let counter equal 0. So we're going to just compute a property name. Okay, let's say that we wanted to, here, let's reassign this to const monster equals that object, and then we'll return monster. Okay, so if I wanted to add some dynamic property name to this monster, then I'd have to do what I just did by like extracting it or creating a variable for it so I can have a reference to it, and then I'd say monster counter plus plus, yeah, we'll just say counter plus plus. So, or we'll say foo plus counter plus plus equals whatever. So now I have this dynamic property name that I'm applying to these monsters. So with ES6, you can actually just do that directly in the object literal itself. So you can say counter is whatever. And that, my friends, is super awesome. And when you need it, you're going to be like, wow, that is so awesome. So yeah, it's great. Any questions about object literals? They're fun. Okay, so parameters. I really want to show you guys REST parameters. These are so, oh yeah, there are so many things about parameters that I just don't have time to show you them all. So I'll just demonstrate the resulting test for you. So here you have, you can have default parameters, so you can say name equals Mercury. If you provide a name, then it will use that. If you don't provide one, then it will use the default. And also if you provide undefined, because these are roughly equivalent. They actually, I believe they're exactly equivalent. But then null is defined, and so it will be equal to null. And then oh yeah, you can even like invoke JavaScript, so you can call a function as a default parameter. And then you have REST parameters that are super awesome. If you're familiar with like Java, they have REST parameters. It's really cool, but basically it just means here I'm going to take a first parameter, then a second parameter, and then the rest of them, hence REST. The rest of these parameters, however many they have, will just be in this array called others, and then I can deal with those however I want. And it's actually an array. It's not like arguments, which is almost sort of kind of like an array, but not really. And oh yeah, and then this is kind of crazy, but you can like do an object that has properties that, yeah, this is like the destructuring of a function parameter, which is like crazy, but I don't have time to really show you why that's so cool. But you can give defaults to properties inside of that destructured object, and then a default object in the case that an object isn't provided. So Wow, time. Arrow functions are cool. So you may or may not have noticed all of the tests are using arrow functions. So in ES6, this would be written with function, but apparently that's too much to type. So it's actually it's much more than just the fact that it's too much to type. It also lets you do single line expressions. So if you put an arrow function on a single line that doesn't have open and close curly braces, then it will execute the statement and return it for you. So the equivalent to these two are actually equivalent functions. They just one's written ES5, the other's ES6. And then the other thing, let's see, we've got this in here somewhere. Oh, well, yeah, the other thing is something that's referred to as lexical this. So who knows what why this might be a problem? I'd say var obj, so I'm going to create an object that has a foo function that says return this dot bar, and then I'll have bar equals foo, or foo bar, whatever. And then if I say console.log obj dot foo and invoke that, that will give me back foo bar. But if I do var my foo equals obj dot foo, and then I say my foo, that is going to give me back undefined. And this is because this in JavaScript is insane, and basically, yeah, it's really frustrating. So the arrow, basically, it's this is bound to whatever context the function is being called upon. So in this here, foo is being called on object. Here, foo is being called on nothing, and so it will be bound to in outside of strict mode, it will be bound to window. Inside of strict mode, you'll get an error. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. So arrow functions avoid this by actually, this is not entirely true either. This is a bad example. A better example would be what am I trying to say? A better example would be foo. Yeah, var or I don't have time. Okay, so just arrow functions are nice. Don't ever use arguments with arrow functions. That won't behave the way that you expect that they will. And
What do you mean
yeah.
arguments? When you're showing us an A and B and
Yeah, don't use the keyword argument, or not the keyword, but yeah, don't do this. So you can say var x equals arguments, and that normally, like in here, x will be A and B, but in here, arguments will be whatever arguments this received, which actually would be whatever arguments this received, which actually would be whatever arguments, yeah. So arrow functions and arguments. Arguments you generally don't want to use anyway, unless you're doing some magical, well, I shouldn't say that because arguments are, there's nothing wrong with using arguments, but arrow functions and arguments, don't do those together. But arrow functions and most anything else, yes, especially with stuff like this. Let me show you what this looked like before. So you have this shopping list and you have this data and you want to filter, and then you want to filter it again, and then you want to sort it, and then you want to map it. So in ES5 that looks like junk, in ES6 that looks like heaven, and that's because you can do these single line expressions that will automatically return the value that is evaluated. One other thing is with arrow functions is if you only have one argument that you're accepting, whoops, then you don't need to have parentheses. Woo! So yeah, that's kind of fun. Oh man, 720. So there are classes. Actually, you know what? So the meetup after this is also talking about ES6. So stay and learn more about that. But you can do classes. Classes are cool. Yeah. The one thing that I would say or caution you against is this word right here. This is why lots of JavaScript developers are like, don't bring classes to my language. It's because extends. Extends is really cool, but it's really not cool if you do it a lot. So you can have like dog extends animal, animal extends living thing, and living thing extends entity, and entity extends like craziness. And so pretty soon you get like all the way down to dog, and dog has some property that was set on entity, and you're like, where did this property come from? So anyway, that's the one thing, like that's the one place where you, like, it made me want to throw up in my mouth when they're like, yeah, classes. I'm like, oh, extends. But it is very powerful, and it's useful to have if when used wisely.
You want
Yeah.
to skip that one on the covering classes then. So
You what?
I'll be covering classes, so if you want to skip that.
Oh, great, thank you. I should actually ask you, are you going to be covering, well, no, actually I should stop now because I want to show you quickly how to set up a project using ES6. So, yeah, let's create a brand new project. New project. Empty project called ES6 for the win. And then we'll cd into our ES6 for the win. And there are a couple of things that you have to do to get ES6 working in your project. So let's we'll just create a file here called index.html. Let's see how quickly I can do this. Actually, WebStorm will give me a couple helpful things. So if I just do index and I say ES6, ES 2015 for the win. And then we'll just add a script here for, I don't know, my source being index.j, I don't know, script.js. And then inside of here we'll have a index.js, so our initial file, and we'll create another file called alert.js, and alert will be a class called alert. Oh, and then I gotta tell WebStorm that I'm using ES6. So ES6, thank you. And then alert will have a we'll just have a couple functions on it. We'll have one called alert, and this will just say window.alert, and it will take the args. Oh, that's so cool. ES6 is so awesome. And then we're going to export default this alert class. So now in here I'm going to import alert from alert.js. I don't need the JS, it's implied. And then I'm going to say alert.alert. And I'll say, hello, friends in SLC JS learners. Oh, thank you. That would not have worked. But it's not ES6's fault, it's mine. Okay, so we would expect that when this script is loaded into the browser, it would alert this fancy alert. However, our browsers won't do classes and these other and import statements and stuff, so we need to actually build this into something that's consumable by the browser. So we're going to use a tool called Babel. So normally, here, whoa, oh man, I just want you guys to see this. So we'll do npm install -g, so for global Babel, and then I already have it installed, so we'll just continue. And then I'll say Babel, my index.js, and that will print out the resulting JavaScript just right into my console. And so I'm going to, let's see, I think this will work. Oh shoot, you know what? Dang it. Babel, help. Help me, Babel. I think I need, shoot. You know what, I failed you guys because I didn't actually practice this beforehand. So, yeah, dang it. Okay, so let me, in 4 minutes, I'll show you guys how to do it for realsies. Because you do not want to run Babel every single time you want to build your project. So we're going to create a new file here called webpack .config.js. So Webpack is a module bundler for the web. Has anybody heard of Webpack before? Webpack rocks, and if you don't know about it, you can know about it because I have some lessons on egghead.io about Webpack, and it's so great. So Webpack, the Webpack config just has a module.export, so it exports a module, or it exports an object that is the configuration for our JavaScript application. And so we'll say the entry is going to be our index.js, and our output path will be dir name, so our current directory, and our file name will be script.js. And then, so we can actually, I believe we could just run Webpack, and this will actually work. Oh, no, it won't. So we need to tell Webpack, hey, when you load this index.js, it's using some special stuff in here that JavaScript doesn't actually know about yet. So I'm going to tell you how to load this module. And you do this through modules loaders. And this is just an array. And we're going to say, I want you to apply to anything that ends in a JS. Why is that not working? Is there something wrong with my regex here? AJ, what's wrong with my regex?
Let's see. What is the goal? You've got a leading star. Why is that?
Oh, yeah, maybe that's what's wrong. Thank you.
And you want to escape your dot.
I also want to escape my dot. Thank you. Okay, and then I'm going to say my loaders here is going to be Babel. And then, yeah, and that's all that I need to do. So I'm going to tell Webpack, when you load all of my scripts and resolve the dependencies and everything, I want you to pass it through the Babel loader. And I need to install that. So I'm going to do npm install Babel loader. And when that is finished, in a moment, hopefully sooner than later, anybody know any jokes?
I've got a couple of announcements. So, real quick for the real novices in here, I know most of this is going over your head. I wouldn't say focus on the details at this point, just recognize that this is ES6 at this point and know where to go for help. Second, Kent already mentioned that he is on egghead.io. He also does a podcast about Angular Air if you're into Angular and AngularJS. OC Tanner provided pizza tonight, and yes, thank you. Last month, Ken did a presentation on Lodash, which Ken mentioned tonight. So you can hit the learners meetup page and get that presentation. We didn't record it, but the code is up there. And next month, we will have a license giveaway again for WebStorm, which is the IDE that Ken is using. And we're actually going to be working on a Code Wars group project, which should be fun. For those of y'all who remember doing Code Wars, we're going to do something similar. Okay.
Okay, let me just show you the intro to Webpack real quick. Actually, no, not the intro to Webpack, but the ES6 thing really quick. So we'll just skip ahead to where we're actually... yeah, man, I'm so sorry, guys. This is embarrassing. I mixed this up. But basically, you can use Webpack, you can use Grunt, you can use Gulp, and you can, what the heck, you can use Babel on the command line if you, or npm scripts if you really want to. I'm not going to show you this. It works, I promise. I'm using it in my project. So, yeah, that's just a very, 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 very quick and very brief rundown of ES6. Like I said, you have the repo on GitHub that you can go and toy around with, and I recommend that you do so, and find the resources that you need to start using ES6 in your projects now, because it is the future and it makes your code a lot awesomer. So yeah, quick question.
So I hear on the Angular side of things that they're, for Angular 2, they're going to be using TypeScript for their whole new syntax.
Yeah.
How does that play into the ES6 stuff?
Yeah, good question.
I'll
So
answer that question too. We don't have time.
yeah, I'll just quickly say, if you're using Webpack, that'll amount to saying TypeScript. And now you can use TypeScript. And TypeScript 1.5 will support most of ES6, not as much as Babel. Another thing that is very exciting is the Angular team just met with the Babel team, and Babel is going to be implementing annotations to support the new Angular syntax stuff as well. And so, yeah, if types aren't your thing, then you can use Babel for Angular too. Good question. Any other questions? Okay, feel free to come ask me afterward. Thank you.